So picture this, a tiny village nestled snugly at the base of a massive mountain, the kind that makes you feel like an ant looking up. In this village, there was this young guy, right? And let me tell you, he was famous, but not in a good way. While everyone else was out there hustling in the fields, taking care of animals, or making cool stuff in their workshops, this dude was just chilling, like really chilling. He'd be stretched out under this ancient oak tree, napping away, lost in these dreamy thoughts of a life where everything was just handed to him on a silver platter. No stress, no work, just pure, unadulterated laziness. And of course, the villagers were like, "What a waste!" They'd shake their heads, muttering about how he wasn't living up to his potential, contributing zilch to the community. Now one day, this super wise old monk rolls into the village. You know the type, full of that deep spiritual wisdom, like he's got life all figured out. He's heard the stories about this lazy young guy and decides he's going to do something about it. So he walks over to where the guy's doing his usual lounging under that oak tree, and in that calm but firm way that monks have, he calls him over. "My son," the monk starts, his voice all soothing but with a hint of challenge in it. "I've got a task for you. It's going to test your spirit, your willpower, everything. I want you to climb to the top of that mountain. And remember, this mountain is huge, and bring back a single feather from the highest peak." The young man, without even fully sitting up, just kind of glances at the mountain, with its peak lost in the clouds, and straight up scoffs. "No way," he says, totally dismissing the monk. "I'm way too lazy to do something like that. And besides, what's the big deal about a feather anyway?" Now, hold up a sec. If you're digging this story and it's resonating with your own journey, maybe it's helping you see things a little differently, why not take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe? Trust me, you don't want to miss the upcoming insights and stories that can guide you along your path to growth. Every bit of wisdom is another step closer to unlocking your full potential. The monk smiled, and you could see that little spark in his eyes, the kind that says, "I know something you don't." He leaned in just a bit and said, "Ah, but here's the twist. The feather I seek isn't just sitting on top of the mountain. Nope, it's hidden on the other side, in a secret cave that you can only reach by climbing all the way to the summit and then making your way down the other side. This isn't just any feather. It's one of great significance, and only someone with real resolve, someone ready to push their limits, can get it." Now, this caught the young man off guard. His curiosity was sparked, and suddenly, the idea of such a unique and mysterious quest started to light a fire in him. A fire he didn't even know he had. Despite his well-earned reputation for being lazy, he couldn't shake the urge to prove himself, to see if he could actually pull this off. So with a mix of doubt and determination, he decided to take on the monk's challenge, if only to satisfy this new curiosity gnawing at him. But man, the journey up the mountain was no joke. The path was steep, all rocky and winding, and it was really putting his physical endurance to the test. Every step felt like it took twice the effort he'd imagined. Pretty soon, he was gasping for air, sweat pouring down his face, and every muscle in his body was screaming at him to stop. But here's the thing. As he kept climbing, something incredible started to happen. That fatigue? It started to shift into something else, something better. He began to feel this rush of exhilaration, this wild excitement he'd never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he was really pushing his limits, stepping out of that cozy little bubble he'd lived in for so long. When he finally reached the summit, the guy was beyond exhausted. His legs were shaking like leaves, barely able to hold him up. But when he looked out from the peak at the endless expanse of the world below, he felt something he'd never felt before, a deep, profound sense of accomplishment. He wasn't just proud. He was proud because he knew he'd earned it, not by taking the easy road, but by tackling a challenge head-on and coming out on top. But, as the saying goes, the real test was yet to come. The descent down the other side of the mountain was even tougher than the climb. The path was narrow and slippery, with jagged rocks ready to trip him up at every turn. He stumbled and fell more times than he could count, his hands and knees getting banged up in the process. But giving up? That wasn't an option anymore. The thought of that feather, the mystery it held, kept him going. Turning back now would mean more than just failing the monk. It would mean betraying this new strength he'd found within himself, this resolve he never knew he had. So, he pressed on, driven by the promise of the feather and the need to prove to himself that he could see this journey through to the end. Finally, after what felt like an endless struggle, the young man stumbled upon the cave the monk had spoken of. The air inside was cool and calm, and through a small opening, a soft light filtered in, illuminating the space in a gentle glow. And there it was, the feather. But it wasn't just any feather. It was luminous, almost alive, shimmering with this ethereal light that pulsed as if it had a heartbeat of its own. As he picked it up, he couldn't help but feel a deep connection to everything he'd gone through to get there. It was as if the journey itself had imprinted on the feather, making it not just a trophy, but a symbol of all he had endured and overcome. But, standing there in the quiet of the cave, clutching the feather, a new problem hit him like a ton of bricks. How on earth was he supposed to get back up the mountain and return this feather to the monk? He was already beyond exhausted. Every muscle in his body was screaming for rest. For a brief moment, the temptation to just give up washed over him. The climb back seemed like an impossible task, like he'd already given everything he had. But then, he remembered that feeling of pure accomplishment and pride when he first reached the summit. He realized that if he'd done it once, against all odds, he could do it again. So he dug deep, summoning every last bit of strength and determination he had left. The climb back up was brutal. His muscles were on fire, his lungs felt like they might burst, and there were moments where he wasn't sure he could take another step. But he kept going. Driven by the knowledge that he wasn't just climbing a mountain, he was climbing out of the pit of laziness and self-doubt that had held him back for so long. Step by step, he pushed through the pain, the exhaustion, the doubt, and finally, he made it. When he reached the monk, the young man was barely standing, teetering on the edge of collapse. But in his hands, he held the feather, and in his heart, he held a sense of pride and fulfillment that was entirely new to him. The monk, with eyes twinkling like he'd known this outcome all along, smiled warmly at him. "Well done, my son," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "Today, you've learned something invaluable. Laziness is not something we should just accept or tolerate. It's a challenge that must be met head-on, a hurdle that must be overcome. By facing this challenge, you've uncovered the strength and determination that has always been within you." The young man nodded, feeling the weight of the monk's words deep in his soul. He finally understood that he'd always had the potential for greatness, but it was his own laziness that had kept him from realizing it. Now, after conquering the mountain and, more importantly, conquering himself, he knew he had the strength and resolve to face whatever obstacles life might throw his way. The journey had changed him, and as he made his way back to the village, it was clear that he was no longer the lazy young man who once lounged under the oak tree. He was someone who understood the value of hard work, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of his true potential. So, here's the deal. The monk's challenge is one of those life lessons that really sticks with you. It's a reminder that laziness isn't just something we can shrug off or let slide. It's like this big, stubborn obstacle that we've got to tackle head on. And yeah, it's tough, but when we push ourselves to reach our goals, especially the ones that seem way out of reach, we tap into this deep well of strength and resilience inside us that we didn't even know we had. This inner strength? It's usually buried under layers of doubt, fear, and let's be honest, a little bit of laziness. But when we face those things, when we actually make the effort to push through, that's when the strength really shines. To kick laziness to the curb, we've got to start by setting goals that scare us a little, goals that stretch us beyond what we think we can do. These aren't just your everyday to-dos. They're the kind of goals that make you grow, that push you to evolve into a better version of yourself. But here's the catch. It's not enough to just set these goals. You've got to stick with them, even when the going gets tough. Every setback, every roadblock is a chance to build your resilience, to learn something new, and to come out stronger on the other side. And let's talk about discipline and consistency for a sec. These are your best friends when it comes to beating laziness. By setting up daily habits that align with your goals, like sticking to a schedule even when you'd rather be doing anything else, you start to build this muscle of discipline. Over time, those little moments of willpower add up, turning into lasting habits that keep you on track and moving forward. This kind of consistency, it's what lays the foundation for long-term success. Now, here's another gem: cultivating a growth mindset. This is all about seeing challenges and failures as chances to grow, not as reasons to throw in the towel. When you start looking at setbacks as learning opportunities, you shift your whole perspective. Instead of avoiding challenges, you start embracing them with curiosity and a sense of purpose. That's when you really start to see progress. In the end, overcoming laziness is all about stepping out of your comfort zone and embracing the challenges that life throws your way. It's about facing your fears, doubts, and limitations head-on and choosing to act despite them. When you do this, you unlock potential you didn't even know you had. Sure, it's not an easy journey, but it's one that leads to real growth, fulfillment, and the realization of your biggest dreams. And hey, if you've stuck with me until now, thank you. Seriously, by making it to the end of this video, you've already done something most people don't. You've taken a real step toward growth. That's huge, and you should be proud. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It's a small thing, but it helps us both keep moving forward. Keep chasing those goals. You're already ahead of the game.